African Ascent is simply thrilled beyond description to bring to you whom many colleagues at Berklee College of Music describe as pure talent. Armsted Christian does not need an introduction. The kind of groundwork, foundational work that he has done is so long that it would take me a major portion of this program to list them all. I simply want my beloved audience there, whom everybody knows I am in love with, to know the following things about Armsted Christian. There is nothing, humanly speaking, that this man has not done from a brief conversation that I had on our way here. He has done construction work. I'm sure he did it, guided by perfection. He has mentored, sculpted, refined, educated the young and the middle-aged, whoever came and solicited his service. He did that with perfection also. Our own famous studio manager, Barbara, herself told me, when I told her that I'm going to bring Armsted Christian on board, she said, you'll be bringing to us pure talent. African Ascent then introduces Armsted Christian for the first time to African Ascent. How honored I am to be your host tonight.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here, truly.
So what I thought we should talk about, if you concur, is about music.
Absolutely.
I know very little about music, although I enjoy listening to it. Perhaps you could give me a crash course on what I should know to understand, to appreciate, and to participate in a musical experience. What does music mean to you?
Music to me is, you hear it often as a cliche expression that it is a universal language. I believe that in my own way. I've been fortunate enough to travel all around the world and see how people respond to music in their specific cultures. Well, what I would say in terms of participating is to come with your heart, to allow your soul to feel, and to be fearless in your expression, trusting that it will land in the right place when you're touched by these sounds and these rhythms that move you to do something, to respond. And so you don't really need a lot of things to enjoy it. That's probably the primary characteristic of what would you need to do, is to enjoy the music first and then let it lead you where it would take you. And more often than not, you'll find yourself landed in wonderful places and experiences that as you're interacting with so many different fabulous types of people and many genres of music as well. So I would say just love it. Learn to love it and appreciate it as you are, where you are.
At Berklee, where I teach philosophy courses, my students bring your name quite often. They describe you as a man who has managed to discipline his ego. That great as he is, they say, he successfully manages not to impose his talents on others. That he's great only because he says he's not, and so on. What do they mean?
That's, first of all, that's very humbling. And I accept that with a lot of pride, primarily because I have a fond relationship with my students. I feel very privileged to be in their presence. I always tell them that they are my best teachers because they're always giving me some fruit for thought, and it manifests in ways that I can communicate with them. I think what they're probably referring to, if I may speak honestly, is that I'm not trying to have a light shine on me, regardless of what credentials I may be able to present. I think it's more important to meet them in their moment. And when you are a teacher, part of being, I think, a very good teacher is being a really great student for how you know how to reach them if you don't understand where they're going. You have to kind of walk in their shoes. And so for me, it's been a real privilege and an honor to not only be at Berklee College and teach, but to be in community programs where I've been a part of as a musician, as an educator, as a clinician, just trying to be honest with them and explain to them that I am here because you're giving me an opportunity to be here. And I want to share what I have with you. I also want to get something from you. Anything you're willing to share back. It's a nice mutual exchange. So that's probably what they're speaking of.
Again, when I was doing some research on you, but most particularly as a consequence of this brief but intense discussion that we had on our way here, I also learned that when you were at Mars College, you did not study music. You were an English major.
Right.
So, what happened? What is it that you have against English?
Oh, I love English. I absolutely love it. I still love, reading Emerson and listening to dissertations on the part of professors that I had who were great scholars. I found that it was a mechanism for me. It was a mechanism for me to express myself at a deeper level. And reading literature and writing, I found to be a real passion of mine. I had that in high school and it went right into college with me. And so music wasn't really a major program at the college that I went to in New York State, Hyde Park, New York, right outside of my hometown, Poughkeepsie, New York, where I was born. I just felt that English was something I had loved in high school. I loved in junior high, and I figured I would continue on. I was actually studying to be a journalist.
Amazing.
I really was. And I was going to chase fire engines and ambulances and get the story, I was being an Associated Press member. And I was very serious about that at the point, but then music always kind of found its way to the forefront in my life. And I just felt it was something that really was my calling, And I figured, why not do both? I love to write. I love music, songwriting, and I wanted to write off-Broadway shows, things of that nature. And I had written a couple of musicals with some friends of mine, and we never got it off the ground to the point where we actually hit the stage. But we actually did some presentations at BU, and a couple of things were showcases that we presented. But I just thought that the English component was very important. I think language is a very important part of how we can progress in our culture. And I always took it very seriously. And I think it served me okay.
How old were you when you first decided to treat music as a permanent vocation? Do you remember that?
In my mind, probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. In my mind. I had visions of wanting to be a saxophone player. My mother sang. She had a beautiful voice. And she never actually encouraged me to be a musician. But my sister used to date a musician who was a sax player. And I think he was interested in my sister a lot, so he'd bring a sax with him when he came to visit. And he'd set it up and play, and I would sit down and look at him like this.
Mesmerized.
Mesmerized. He had a beautiful golden horn, and it was huge. He played a tenor. And I said, I want to do that. He played wonderfully. He was a good musician. I could tell even at that age that he was a good musician. And I think I knew then that I liked what that did. I liked how it made me feel.
At the age of 5?
At the age of 5.
And you still remember it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like the Jackson 5?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And my mother used to sing around the house, and she would have me sing songs, nursery rhymes and things like that, and some spirituals, hymns. So I grew up around music a lot, and I knew very early it was something that was going to move me, and I always found my way to do it, even around my childhood friends. I was when they would come to sing a song, or at the dance that we would have, they would ask me to sing or something like that. And I had singing groups and all that coming up, so it's always been with me.
And like all of us, including myself, some of us love our mothers.
Oh, absolutely.
But you seem to love your mother in an exceptional way.
Yeah, she was a wonderful mentor to me, and just a great guide. I attribute everything I have to her teachings. My father passed when I was very, very young.
How
I was about 3 or 4 years old when he passed. And I found out later I was a change of life child because my mother was 40 when I was born. My father was 70 when I was born. That's a little difference in age.
Nice. That's right.
So I guess that they were still very interested in each other at some point. But yeah, I just knew early on that I thought music was something that was pulling at me in a nice way. It was very comfortable. It didn't seem like it was a struggle. Like I always found a resonating tone from my soul with music. It just always felt good.
I would like us to explore that even a little more.
Okay.
Our colleague,
Yes.
Peggy,
Yes.
from Berkeley.
Yes, Peggy's a sweetheart.
She
Brilliant woman.
spoke at length about you. And she introduced you as someone who is interested in treating music as therapy. That for him, music is therapeutic, she said. For the world of me, I don't know what that means. I'm sure you do. In what way is music therapeutic? In what way does it heal us? Heal us from what?
Well, in my class, I have a class that I started at Berkeley called Flowology.
Okay.
The intent of Flowology was to, I hope this will help to frame the question with the answer that I'm trying to give to you to hope make this clear to our audience, is that Flowology was a premise to introduce our students to the black diaspora, our culture, black culture, irrespective of the continent, the country. It was our African descent that binds us. And the premise was to show how rich our culture is in America. That was our primary focus. And from its early beginnings, from slave trade through slavery in America and parts of the Caribbean, but primarily America, to show the struggles and triumphs of Africans and how the contributions of those people, our people, has helped to shape and frame a society and really mold it on a global level with all of the gifts that we bring to it. And that's in terms of language, style, food, music, literature, art, clothing, swag, all of those things that we have. Our style, how it has influenced the media, how it's woven its way as far as language from hip hop into the commercial marketplace, where you find Queen Latifah is a cover girl and Beyonce are cover girls for makeup and Max Factors and all the wonderful products that are being delivered to American society, where the clothing lines of artists have permeated the suburbs and they popped out of the inner city areas, where the beats and rhythms and rhymes are backdrops and they are the foundations and canvases for people to sell products like Lincoln Continentals and these Grand Jaguars. And, you know, our product is a brand. We are a brand, actually, in our own way in the commercial marketplace. But the course itself is to show the evolution of a culture through its struggles, and then to show the victories of a people that sometimes aren't really regarded as even being human sometimes in history. And yet we are giving birth to a first family who is an elegant family, the Obamas, and we see what history has sprung forth. And so philology is a way of teaching these things to help students get a better handle on their cultures. We do parallels in our class. We write every week. They do research every week about black people.
Every week.
Every week. And then they have to write what they've learned. And they draw, not only do they write about what they've learned, but they have to show parallels in their own cultures, how we are very much alike as human beings. And it's a way of trying to teach activism, a sense of having a real understanding of humanity. If you learn something about people, it kind of diminishes your fear about those individuals. So my purpose at the college and in this class is to create a closeness in culture by use of our own struggles as a people, so others can kind of identify with that and realize that we're not that different. We all have struggles. But if we learn to work together and kind of understand something about each other's history, we can develop a different closeness and then go out and try to change the world. From within our families first, because there's a lot of turmoil sometimes in families, working outward to your community, then into your global community. So that's really the purpose of it, is to try to teach a little bit about how you utilize music through all of those areas. Music has been there. It was in the field holler with the slaves. Even though some of us didn't speak the same language, we had the same heart. So we could moan in our pain, and we'd understand what that moan was, because we could hear the heart. You know, so the rhythms. And those rhythms permeated our culture. And they taught us a lesson as well. So those are the kind of things we try to identify in the class, that we have a rich history. It has helped so many in the world. It has influenced everything in the world. And it's something that we should take very, very seriously with a lot of pride. And we should remember those who came before us and remember their songs and help to see how those songs can help to change our culture now. Our youth are searching. They want to anchor themselves to something. And so I feel it's my responsibility as a teacher, as a black man, and as one who's a humanitarian and an activist. I feel responsible to try to at least explain to them what I know to be true through living it and being mentored by others who came before me, that this music is a very powerful entity. It does heal us. Without it, we are not going to be the same people. We rely on it as part of our spiritual growth. You know, we worship with it. We pay homage to the divine with it. When children are born into the world, there's a song for them. And if you look at other cultures, they're always very connected to the musical part of their life.
Quite right.
You know, so I try to explain that to my students, and they, at the end of that semester, I see how they come forth with their own stories of culture and of personal life and struggle. And I see the transformation in them by them understanding something about us. I mean, they start out reading slave narratives, and we find songs that relate to those slave narratives, and I have them singing them in class. And they get connected to the spirits. They have to know something about that slave. It's just not a black person that has no identity and no soul. I make sure they know something about them. They have to research that slave, read their story, go back into the book of records if they can find it. Go to the town hall meetings where it says slave, old man, 70 years old, first name, no last name. slave for life. You want to know something about that person. That little boy who's 6 years old was a slave for life. That older woman, that young girl, they have a spirit. And that's how I connect with these students, that they get to know their spirit.
It is remarkable. And your good colleague, John Kellogg, that African Ascent had the honor to have as a guest, also said that for him, talent, he says, is to blacks as oil is to Arabs. I wonder if you'd like to break that.
That goes right inside. You can't live without it. You got to have it. It seems that we have been, and not to boast and to be a separatist in any way, but our history is documented. And in truth, we love the arts. We are the arts that we love. They are not separate. They are the same. We walk in rhythm. We speak in rhyme and rhythm. We have a cadence. Music is something that elevates us to a point of almost a hypnotic state when it's really, really great. Like listening to a John Coltrane solo, and it's just chorus after chorus after chorus. It's like standing and listening to a preacher in the pulpit who is overcome by the Holy Spirit. And it's not him speaking anymore. It's just music speaking. It's the Spirit speaking through them. And so there's no separation between man. We are all the same in that moment.
Is that how you feel, Armsted, when you listen to Love Supreme?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like that when I've had a chance to sing it. It's just...
Yourself.
Oh, my goodness. It's higher than we are. It's coming from a different place, you know. There's a stimulation that exists when you trust those areas of yourself to be artistic and to yield to that voice that's pushing you in that direction. It's like someone painting on a canvas. They're not even sure what's going to go down there. They have a form that they have in mind, but then the paint takes over.
Is that how you feel when you write your compositions?
Absolutely, absolutely. It becomes a challenge and a struggle sometimes because the yielding part is difficult when you have knowledge of the art form. And the hardest thing to do is not allow your rudimentary understanding, the fact that you actually know what you're doing, to be the thing that influences you the most. Because then you can become a formula writer. You can be excellent at what you do, but it's so predictable to you. I think the magic is that with all those things that you know, you release them. They're there anyway. And now you wait for the influences to come from away from yourself to permeate you and then create from that place, as opposed to doing it all in your own.
If I understand it correctly, then correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that when you are performing or writing a composition, what you have to guard yourself against is the permeation, as you call it, of skill.
Yes, absolutely.
Too much skill.
Too much skill, yes.
So instead, you decouple yourself from the skill so that this other perfect voice could have the appropriate space through which to permeate your presence, so that the skill that you're so proud of could be taken to a level that the skill itself could not possibly do, as a consequence of humbly asking for guidance from this perfect voice.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better than you have just said. It's perfect. Because I think that if you're in a place where you become too dependent on, as you say, what you know as your skill, how do you release that? How do you discover anything new? How does your journey change? I think the whole point of art is excavating the soul. It's like being a musical archaeologist, if you will, where you go underneath those layers and you pull up those different layers of the earth that exist within you. And then you discover that sphinx underneath that you didn't know was buried there. And then it rises up like a phoenix to you.
It's remarkable what your students say about you at the expense of making you shy. Is this, they say that this is one of the few professors at Berkeley who does not let his skills overwhelm you when he's teaching you. That he makes you feel important, they say. He makes you feel significant.
That's
that
humbling.
As he's teaching you musical skills, he doesn't undermine your own talents, your own hidden talents, by overwhelming you with his. Instead, he lets you be so that this hidden talent could release itself. How do you do that? Considering the fact that you're not that old after all. A man like me is still battling his ego. I'm so self-conscious of my looks, my talents, whatever they may be, whatever it is that I think I have. I am haunted by it. I still have to overcome this pressure that comes from that quarter. Mind you, as a professional philosopher, I haven't succeeded yet. And I don't have much time left now to sculpt my personality anymore. I'm already badly formed.
See, we're who we are. I think, honestly, my brother, and I do think about this because it's important that I don't forget it. I really appreciate the uniqueness of each person. And I think their voice is as unique as the different voices of the birds that wake us up in the morning, if you will. A sparrow doesn't sound like a robin. A nightingale doesn't sound like a blue jay, you know. They're all birds, but they all have a unique voice. And so when I listen to a student sing, or if I hear their writing, or if they're playing an instrument, they're expressing usually their honesty at that moment where they are. And sometimes it's not even related to their skill level. It's just really related to their trust that maybe they can play their best for you or sing their best for you, and that you'll give them something that they can use. And so in that, what I try to do is I try to help them shape something that they're going to do anyway, if their desire is of that level. Because as you know, some things are intuitive in art and in culture. And some things you will teach yourself because your desire is of that level. You're passionate about what you're doing. And more often than not, I find those students who are excited about this thing. And so they're easier to help guide. But the most fun is the challenge of a student who isn't passionate, who doesn't believe that they can discover something new about their instrument, that doesn't feel they have one, and they have no voice. And to take that student and guide them through this journey and see the results at the end of it is magnificent. I get excited about that because it lets me know that as a teacher, you're there to teach all of your students, you know, and to learn from all of your students. And that's a great honor. It's a great privilege. And I feel so fortunate to have that opportunity.
What I distinctly recall about a year ago, when I accidentally came to your panel, Florology.
Flowology.
Is your ability to deal with this phenomena of race without being conscious of it? How do you do that? It's so difficult for a black male.
Race is our four-letter word in this country. We have a lot of phobias around it. We try to avoid communication around it and all the time acting like we don't see it. And And that happens to all cultures here. It's not just black and white. It goes into Asian and Hispanic. It's gender issues that go with that too. It's our four-letter word. And I look at that in a way where it's humorous to me in some ways that we are so misguided as a culture, a society, human society. We are preoccupied with looking at people with a vexed lens, if you will. It distorts the individual. And so that's a great opportunity to use to prove people wrong about what they see, because it becomes an illusion of a person that they see. They never get a chance to see the interesting person, the loving individual, the brilliant person, the person that has something to offer society. And so I feel, again, through this offering of philology, this class that I have, is a perfect opportunity for students primarily to get to know not only themselves but one another at a soul level and start to look at each other as the human race first and celebrate the differences that are racial, which are basically cultural, and not looking at them as this anomaly. It's something very unique that we celebrate, but we do not have to be afraid of it. And we should be able to communicate about it, because most of the communication comes from ignorance. Not ignorance from being stupid, ignorance because we just don't know. We haven't investigated that individual. We haven't sat and talked with that person. We haven't interacted with that person. We haven't been to that person's house to eat their food. We haven't danced with that individual. You know, there's so much that we don't do, but yet we formulate these crazy ideas about who that person might be. And we should think that maybe they're formulating those ideas about us as well. So we are kind of in the same bowl, as you would say. We have to learn to be a little more understanding, a little more open-minded, and receptive to change. And I think it's beautiful to see so many different cultures and races. It's like clothing. No one wants to wear the same color all the time. You know, but I like black, but you might put a scarf on it. You might have a little color red in there or something, you know, just accentuate it. But it's beautiful to have these conversations. I think that if you show them that you're not afraid to talk about it, and I always tell my students, I'm a multicultural man. I'm some everybody. I have the world in me. You know, on my mother's side, there's Blackfoot Indian and also Cherokee and African American, deep roots of Africa, Madagascar. I've seen pictures of cousins of mine from years ago, and beautiful people. Down my mother's side, my father's side, there's Scandinavian, African, there's Irish, I'm the multicultural man. And so I celebrate all of the people that are in me, all the cultures and races that are in me. And I try to explain that to students that, you know, you have no choice in who you are. So don't be bitter about it or boastful about it. Learn about it and learn how you relate to others as well, because we are on the same planet. And if we need each other, we better be coming a running quick, because there may be a moment that I need a helping hand from you. And although I may not know you, my spirit knows you, knows your spirit, because we have a human spirit. And for me, that's always been the most important part of us.
And now, of course, at the expense of tiring you, I would like to know a little more about how you must have felt when you decided to be a musician formally, and then chose some of the best colleges in the world to learn music. And then you applied to Juilliard and
yes, I applied to
Berklee
Juilliard.
College of Music.
And Berkeley
and
as well.
Events turned out to bring you to Berklee.
Yeah, Juilliard decided to bring me to Berkeley.
Yeah.
They say, well,
Let's
you know,
talk about
we have a
your
better
memories.
place for you to go.
That's right.
That would suit you more, and they were absolutely right. No, I applied to Juilliard when I was probably around 22 years old, And I applied to Berklee as well at the same time. I assisted with musicians in my hometown and always been involved in bands and playing saxophone, flute, piano, whatever was available. And I asked to be mentored by this gentleman who was a great musician named Byron Morris. Wow. Great sax player. And I'll never forget this date. I asked to go and sit in with his band on a Sunday afternoon. I was too young at the time to be in the clubs, like most of us. But I would sneak in, and they would let me come in and play with them. I couldn't play very well at that time. And I remember him telling me in a music store that I was visiting in our hometown, he was working on a score. He had this huge piece of sheet music he was writing on and changing notes. And I asked him, I said, Byron, what are you doing? He says, I'm arranging this music. I said, how do you know what you're putting down is the right notes? He said, I can hear it. I said, you can hear that music coming off that paper? He said, absolutely.
Seriously?
Yeah, he said, I can hear every note. I know exactly what everything sounds like. He says, you can do that too. He said, you have a very good ear. He said, but you just don't know the rudiments of music. You need to study. Why don't you apply? And he gave me 2 colleges to apply to. Why don't you apply to Juilliard and to Berklee? I said, man, I could never do that. He said, yes, you can. He said, you can do it. And at the age of 23, I got accepted to Berklee College of Music. I left my hometown of Poughkeepsie, New York, and came to Boston, Massachusetts with $125. That's all I had.
That's all you had.
That's all the money I had in the world.
And your talent.
And the college. I had 1 semester to get through it. I said, I cannot fail. Amazing. And I worked very hard, and it was a struggle for me because I was around other musicians who had more training, who understood the rudiments of theory in music.
Who were some of the great musicians that you remember?
Oh, my goodness. Branford Marsalis.
Marsalis,
he was one. Walter Beasley had come to the college. Bill Pierce was there at the time, but Bill was a beginning teacher at Berklee. But Bill was also had become my teacher, and actually Bill Pierce and I lived in the same apartment building in Roxbury, along with another gentleman named Keith Copeland, who was an amazing musician. He's in Germany now, he's a drummer. Worked with Stevie Wonder and so many fantastic musicians. And his father was my mentor as well. Ray Copeland was a great trumpet player who worked with Coltrane, Dizzy Gillespie, and was a great arranger. He was my arranging mentor and served as a mentor to me to change my major once I got into Berklee and I went through the initial curriculum. I switched my major from arranging contemporary music to classical composition. And I never saw myself doing that. It was just something that I felt compelled to try because I was in an institution that everything was possible. I saw that I could compete, that I had what I needed to survive it. And it was a struggle, but you know, through great struggles come great triumphs.
So you graduated from Berklee?
I graduated with a music degree in composition, 1978, and I turned my portfolio in to my classical professor and mentor, and I got on a bus and went to New York, and I started touring right away. I never got a chance to go across the stage and get my degree. Amazing. Because as soon as the day I had to turn my portfolio in, I was slated to go on the road.
So we have this long stretch of time between the Berklee graduation, 1978, and the professorship at Berklee, 1999. So we have this 20 years to account for. I couldn't have covered all this in the introduction.
That's
why I wanted to do it this way. So what kind of things were you doing between 1978 and 1999?
My first show, I will say that while I was a student at Berklee, I was also doing a musical in Boston.
I see.
Called Dancing in the Street. It was the longest running musical in Boston.
Dancing in the Street.
And it was a
Father Blue.
Yeah, and it was actually it was a Motown review at a theater called the Next Move Theater. And one of our dear producers who just passed away was Victoria Howard Evans. Wonderful, wonderful woman. Introduced me to the theater in Boston through that show. And it employed, it was an all-black cast. And it employed probably, there's 8 on-stage cast members and I think a 7-piece band. 15, 16 black folks every week, 8 shows a week for almost 2 years straight.
Wow.
And so I was going to college, I was also working in the show.
Working in the show.
And when I graduated from college, actually we went to Washington, D.C. and did a show at the Ford's Theater where Lincoln was assassinated. And we were there for a little while. Then Motown decided they wanted the show, they wanted more control over the show, and so we were terminated, you might say. But it was a wonderful show. A lot of lives were changed through that show. Great, great artists, actors, musicians. Some of us still at Berkeley teaching. And from that show, I went to New York and started working with a gentleman named Najee.
I see. Najee.
And Najee and I have been friends with Najee. Used to study at New England Conservatory. Yes, and he and I had known each other for years, and he invited me into his band. And I started working with his band, and through that 6-year stint, because I was with him for 6 years.
6 years, yeah.
I done some songwriting with him also. Got a gold record through his relationship with me as a band member and as a writer on one of his albums. And from him, I went to a gentleman named Will Downing. Will Downing is known as one of the greatest balladeers of the smooth jazz and adult contemporary market in American music. Wonderful, rich baritone, great guy. And I was with Will for 10 years.
Wow.
And in between those artists, I was also working with Marion Meadows, Bob Baldwin, a group called Special Effects, with Kelly Minucci and George Jinda. I've worked with Boney James, Jeff Lorber. Got a chance to work with George Duke at Berkeley. I've worked with quite a few artists, Katie Lang, Diana Ross. Quite a few folks, yeah, quite a few folks, you know. Toured all over the world. And I had a nice run, you know. And I have 2 Grammy nominations as a songwriter with Will Downing and Rex Rideout, great producer out of L.A. And I've had a really great career. I mean, I always said that if I was fortunate enough to do the things that I want to do and have the desires of my heart, I have had them. I have no regrets.
That's precisely why, if you notice, why the introduction was so curt. I looked at your portfolio in my mind, and I thought, I said to myself, to be absolutely pretentious to introduce this man through an outline of what he has done. Instead, I wanted this to be part of the narrative, part of the story that you're telling us now. Now, so who are some of the great musical talents that you've met and whom you're influenced by?
I'll tell you,
to put it differently, how must a talent such as Coltrane or Miles Davis been at the time that you were growing up?
Well, I tell you, I used to date a young lady back in my hometown whose father was a jazz aficionado. And I can remember sitting up on their couch with her till probably around, I was probably 14 years old, but I just lived down the street, so my mother knew where I was. And her father knew where I was too, because he was in the next room in the kitchen. But he liked Miles, and he liked Train. And he had this one album.
I love them both.
He had one album, Miles, with this song called Blues for Pablo. And Sketches of Spain, that album. And we listened to that album for hours. And she and I never said a word. We just listened to the music. And I just loved jazz early on. I knew that it was the most magical music I'd heard. I used to listen to Yusef Lateef on flute, and James Moody, and Ahmed Jamal playing piano, and Dizzy Gillespie blowing on trumpet, and Miles Davis, and on and on and on, and Johnny Hartman, rich baritone, Arthur Prysock, Brooke Benton, and Nat King Cole, Johnny Mathis. And it goes on and on, Sarah Vaughan and Ella. As a child, I used to listen to this music. And so that was my introduction. I also listened to Aretha Franklin and Gladys Knight and James Brown and Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding. So many different styles of art.
Marvin Gaye.
Oh, Marvin Gaye, yeah.
How could you
That's
forget
right.
Marvin Gaye?
All of that, Peaches and Herb, all that, all the groups, Temptations, Smokey Robin and Miracle.
Impressions.
Oh, Curtis Mayfield was my favorite.
Yes.
What a poet.
Superfly. Yes.
What a poet.
Yes.
An amazing poet. And so my beginnings it was a very wide range of art and music that influenced me. And that's why I like all kind of music today, and I can write pretty much any kind of music. I liked Charlie Pride as a kid. People thought I was crazy. You listen to this music. I liked Elvis Presley. I thought he was a great singer. Frank Sinatra. Liked all of that. Mel Torme. You know, I listened to everybody because I thought it was important. I just like good music. You know what I mean? I don't care where it comes from. It didn't matter to me.
What's your definition of good music?
Music doesn't
Let's go philosophical.
Music that doesn't annoy me. It's real simple with me. If I'm aggravated by it, it can't be good for me. You know? I've heard hip hop I love. I mean, my kids are into the music, so I'm hearing all of this stuff. And plus, being at the college, you have to stay
Oh,
open-minded because,
absolutely.
you know, you get it's all there.
Yes.
And I embrace it because I think it's important not only to mentor but to listen. So many times we find that our young people get a lot of flack. They're disrespected even. And they're learning how to be mature. And we've all had that time in our lives. It may look different than theirs. But the attitude isn't that much different. There's music that we did that our parents didn't approve of. They didn't get it. There's a style of how we dress, they didn't appreciate it. And we have children who we are going through that with them now. I'm becoming my parent. But I'm trying to remember what it felt like to be that child, growing up trying to find their balance. And so when I communicate with my own children, that's the conversations that we have.
Same.
It's not about chastening them or degrading them in any way. It's about asking them, why is this important to you? And can you help me understand what you're doing and why it's important to you? So that I can become closer to you. So that we don't have that distinction, that difference, where we're not understanding that we have to work together as a family. And I try to bring that same attitude into the classroom, wherever I'm going. You know, I think it's not different. I think young people want to know that you're there. They want you to communicate with them, but they want to be respected, even if we don't appreciate or agree. We don't have to be disagreeable. And I think
it's remarkable. And they indicate to me that we have about 5 minutes left. I'm a bit annoyed because I haven't begun interviewing you yet. All of this was a warm-up to the interview,
I know.
Which means that African Ascent will have to make you promise this afternoon that you will become part and parcel of it, so that we can swim in this stream of talent that you have.
I would love to come
including
back.
a
It'd be
performance, hopefully. So now I have a couple of questions left. The first will be quite short because the second will be long. The first is this. I was struck by something that you said, again in the car, that you are a self-taught musician. Now my question is this. Is music something that one learns by taking courses, or is music that one learns by learning it from a force outside of him?
See, you being a philosopher, this is an interesting question. Only because, in hindsight, I feel that it is both. It can be both. I was in a position at my early beginnings to have a mother who provided me with an opportunity for instruments. I came home one day from school, there was a piano in my room, upright piano in our home. And she used to work for a lady who she was very close to, and the woman asked her, does anybody in your family play piano? She says, well, no, but my son's a musician. She just knew. And she gave her a piano. So she brought the piano home. I asked her if I could have a flute, because I heard Yusef Lateef play flute on an album, and she allowed me to get a flute.
She knew.
She never blocked me, man. You know what I mean? And then I would play it. I'd figure it out. But I always felt that when I was around musicians who studied, that there was an inadequacy between me and them on my part, because they were more fluent. And so I think it's both. I prefer to be one who, I know we're moving in time, I would prefer to be one who has a gift and that enhances the gift by studying.
Okay. And now, we have exactly 3 minutes left, and I would like you to speak about what you're working on now in light of your own condition.
Okay. I have a condition called sarcoidosis. Excuse me. Sarcoidosis is a autoimmune deficiency disorder. Mine happens to be pulmonary, it's in my lungs. I was diagnosed with it in 1976. I've been living with it from stage 3 to stage 4 of the condition since that time. It is a very common disorder among African Americans. And African American women are the highest group to be attacked by this disease. It is treatable, but it hasn't been curable that we know in terms of pharmaceutical medicines. But I have met individuals who claim they have remedies holistically to help stave the condition. And I started a foundation. The name of the foundation is the Armsted Art Christian Foundation for Sarcoidosis. It's a very long phrase. Sarcoidosis Research and Education. And the foundation is now going into its 3rd year of operation. And we have been able to, the website, I can give it to you if you like, is sarcoidosisfoundation.org. And you can look us up online. And I have a lot of love for this because I have met so many people who have this condition that I would have never met otherwise. And I think as they see what I've gone through, I've come out, so to speak. I've had this condition for a long time, but I never told anybody about it. Because I didn't want people to think that, you know, they had to treat me any differently. But I've had some struggles with it, and there was a time where I was failing, and I'm doing a lot better than I was going on 3.5 years now.
Well, as I said in the introduction, African Ascent is particularly honored to have brought a guest to you who has clearly displayed a great talent, but communicated it to us all with an arresting sense of humility, up and including the last note that he made about his own condition, which he does not use as an excuse to abort his work, his lifetime work, his commitment to music, but does it clearly, jovially, humbly, and most affectionately. I'm personally taken in by his presence, and I would like my public to know how grateful I am to him to have come to participate in this humble television program that commits itself to serve my brothers and sisters there, namely African Ascent. This has been your host, Dr. Theodros Kiros, for African Ascent. Good evening.